Otherwise,
but whether no. But whether
listen,
they admit it or not, it's your land.
it is my land. It's a fact.
They don't have to admit anything.
100%.
Yes, guys, welcome once again to another BrBpTV Podcast. Of course, I'm your boy, Mmce, and we are back with more vibrations, guys. Of course, we're going to look into the storyline of an individual known as David, aka White Rasta, aka Quarry, and he's in the building with us, brothers and sisters. He's here to tell his story on a number of things that are pertaining to him and, of course, his family as well. Brother, welcome to another vibe here on this here BrBpTV Podcast. What's up? Greetings. Your name is Quarry. What's going on with that Quarry?
What's the patois for, like when a chicken is struggling on a hot yard, dry yard, and scratching to find food.
Yeah.
I got left with children when they were little and had to struggle a lot to raise them alone.
So you want your own raising them or something?
Yeah, I got left with 3 boys, an 8-month-old, a 2-year-old, and a 12-year-old.
Okay. Where are they? Are they in Dominica?
Now they're gone. No, everybody grown now. My last baby's a soldier now. He went up to the States. He's now in the military up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you're with us right now, and the people might want to know a little bit more about you. I'm sure you're not unfamiliar with the media. I think some years ago there was a struggle that was happening with you, I think, in the international airport. And I think you were on Emo News speaking about that. But before we get into that whole aspect right there, because it seems like things have escalated way beyond just what happened or what was said in that interview. Talk to us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, how did you know about Dominica? Just get a little synopsis in that regard right there.
Okay, well, I'm David Shargo. I'm born in the States.
Which part of the States?
I was born in Maryland, just
okay.
outside of D.C. I left the States. I've been on my own since I'm about 15, so I left young.
Okay.
So I went to Indonesia at 15. I turned 16 over there. Came back to the States and didn't fit back in once I saw how big the world was outside of the system I had been born in. Wound up dreading up in Jamaica in the late 80s. Went through a lot. Went from there to India. Lived in India, Kashmir, then Nepal for a while. Made it into France through Russia.
Wow, you've been traveling. Wow.
Met my ex-wife there, so I wound up going to the island of Réunion next to Madagascar to live, where my first son is born.
Africa region.
It's to the east of Madagascar. So you have so to the east in the Indian Ocean, from going east from Kenya, you'll see the huge Madagascar, and then to the east of Madagascar is the island of Réunion, and it's in between Madagascar and Ile Mauritius, Ile Maurice. Right, so I was there for a while, my first son born, and we come back up France. I do another maybe 8.5 years in France. And while I'm in France, I meet a DA partner who had come backdoor into France. Like he had an English girlfriend and they had split up. He had come backdoor into France.
Yeah.
And by then, I had been there long enough that I had learned French. I knew how to find work without papers and all the kind of thing to figure.
That's what I was trying to figure out. How are you just jumping up everywhere, just going all over the place?
2 things. One is so I wound up doing humanitarian work on my own in the Civil War in Kashmir, trying to find a friend of mine's family who had already escaped. And kind of got trapped there for a while. And so I would buy things from there. And then when I made it into Nepal, collected more things. And then when I finally made it to Europe, I had things to sell. So I didn't speak the language, but went straight for the flea markets. And that made a first money to start to immigrate. And I'm a cook. And the truth is that you don't have to speak the language. Once people like the food you make, you get free rent. Yeah. So for lazy white French people, I used to get free room and board by cooking and cleaning for them.
Okay. That's what's up.
Until I mastered the language, and then I opened my own business. So
how long did it take you to master the language, though? I mean,
well, I've been through 8 languages now. So French. I'd say within a year I could do basic conversations and all my needed things like
the necessities,
toilet tissue, shopping and shit, that stuff. And by 2.5-3 years, I was fully fluent. By 5 years, I was writing in their language, and then I started performing stories I wrote in their language to them. So then I knew I had really mastered their language. Yeah. So, yeah, a couple years.
It seems like you've been all over the place, bro. And now you're in Dominica right now. Can you tell me how many countries have you actually been in?
17.
17 countries. Yeah. And that's across the world, and you travel in different places. And what led you to Dominica? That's what I really want to. What led you to Dominica?
This partner, and forgive me, I'm getting old. I forget his name. I had told him, well, come live with me because I already know how to, do things.
Yeah.
And get around and all of that. So for like 5 months, the man lived in my apartment, and every night he was nostalgic for DA, and I'd be nostalgic for Jamaica, J.
Yeah.
And he was always saying like, DA's like little J.
Yeah.
Which is not so true, but there you go. Anyways.
He was propping it up more than Okay.
Now the thing is, when I dread up in Jamaica, we were squatting land. It was two Jamaicans who brought me into their Zion. And then back then was a lot of trouble for us. Yeah. Right?
Civil, is it civil or what? Or
the police and defense force were raiding us.
Okay.
So at time police came and raided our farm, shot my partner.
And I'm guessing around that time you were living more of the ITIL lifestyle.
Yeah, I was, to be quite frank, I don't like lying. I was growing weed in bush for the first time in my life, living autonomously, checking this is the way, right? I was 20 years old, 18, 19, 20 years old. And I'm about 20 when the defense force comes and raids our place, takes what we have. After finding books in our house, puts a conspiracy charge on us because back then there wasn't a lot of people that read in Zion.
Let me just fix your mic.
Sure. So when that happened, I had to leave Jamaica.
Yeah.
And at 20 years old, I decided I'm going to buy my own piece of land one day that nobody can run me from.
Yeah.
And it just took a whole lot of years in other countries before I finally accumulated enough money to do so.
Yeah. And I was doing buying and selling and
selling, cooking. I was a special educator for abused children.
Okay.
I had a one-man show doing stories that I wrote.
Yeah.
I did anything to survive, whether it was intellectual or manual. It don't matter. And so, just going back to this guy from DA, years after he had lived with me is when I finally had enough money to buy land, but I never forgotten that.
Yeah.
So I took a year traveling to different places, seeing where I could find a piece of land that had clean water and was a similar layout to what the Zion was in Jamaica.
Yeah.
So when I come here, I never come here as a tourist. I came here scouting. And then I see the way we was farming when we was a real country back then, and we was a united people. I was so impressed by the strength of us.
Yeah, Dominica.
Yeah, absolutely. Because back then, we were real men.
Yeah.
Every farmer felt like a king.
Yep.
We had control of our destiny. Every fisherman felt like he was king of the sea.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That is irreplaceable and very unique in the world. So,
and what year? Can you tell me what
2001.
year? 2001. Okay.
2001, I buy my land and immigrate here.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So you outside doing your hustle, making money, earning money, euro, US dollars, and then you move to Jamaica. I guess the currency.
I moved to Jamaica before.
Oh.
I'm in Jamaica as a young fella.
What age? 20, 21, 18? Okay.
18, 19, and 20. And I finally leave just after my 20th. I'm at 20 in a couple months.
So you left Jamaica to go where?
I go back to America for a little less than a year. And then I go on a mission to India.
Okay. What were you doing in India?
So I knew when I went to America, I met a man who's the only Pakistani Rasta I've ever met in my life. And he was a man named Gudu.
Gudu. Okay.
And
was he, did he go to Jamaica?
No.
He just,
Gudu was a journalist in Pakistan with his brother. And they were not religious Muslims. They were writing openly.
Yeah.
And because it's a religious government, they put what they call a fatwa, which is a death warrant, against these two brothers, and they had to get political asylum in America. Once he's in America, he learns about Rastafari, sees his own liberation struggle from his country aligned with Africa's struggle, and he dreads up as the first Pakistani Rasta. Now, at that time, I'm basically the first white Jewish Rasta anybody's ever seen, and so we kind of, reason easily together.
Yeah. But let's just put a pause on that one. Sure. How did you yourself become a Rasta?
Okay, so God, that's a long road. But so I grew up very political in the sense that my uncle was one of the people that started the SDS, the student movement in the 60s in America.
In the US,
And he was very radical, and there was a period of time in which I lived with him. So he kind of radicalized me to the struggle. He used to go into the Deep South and unionize black workers against the white bosses and shit. He went through and stuff, and he went through a lot.
Yeah.
So he was like my hero. So I was really involved in protest, and I worked for Greenpeace and all this kind of stuff. And then I realized that this was a hopeless venture because white supremacy was such a controlling entity that we were dancing within their ring, but we couldn't change the ring. And then I get shown The Harder They Come.
What's that?
The movie with Jimmy Cliff, the first Jamaican movie that's exported to America. And I'm mystified by these Russ. I'm really interested. And then
did you know about Bob Marley during that time?
Oh, yeah. I grew up knowing Bob Marley. I grew up with Bob Marley's music. And when Bob Marley dies when I'm 12, my uncle was mourning the day.
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel you.
So yeah, that was a big part of my growing up. But it's only because of a Jamaican American friend of mine when I was in school, who was going down to visit his grandmother in Jamaica, and then I wind up going down to meet them, and then I get exposed to Rastafari, and the light switch clicks on. And I realized, this is me.
So you feel like during that upbringing where struggle was something that was very present in your life, and you felt like, humans have to go back to sort of that ital kind of understanding.
I don't like lies. And I think that at a certain point, I got fed up of being lied to. And I think that we're raised with so many lies. Some of them to try to protect us from being too afraid. Yeah. Like we tell children, most people are good. We don't want them to have nightmares.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? So there's a certain level at which is kind of okay. But I grew up in an area where there was some very economically successful people around. My family wasn't, but there was a lot around us.
Yeah.
And the unbelievable hypocrisy of these people who had no empathy, no compassion, and saw themselves as moral people because they were wealthy.
The money speak.
The money spoke as if that qualified them as a good person.
Yeah. I think that is one of the biggest problems that we have, even in these present times.
100%.
Because once we see people have money, we're like, okay, that person
is a success.
Yeah, but we don't realize that sometimes that money can be rooted in certain things. According to the great book, the love of money is the root of all evil.
Nobody's more handsome than the devil. Nobody has a better car than the devil. Nobody drives.
That's true,
Nobody has better clothes. So
Mm.
when you're defining success by material, you're definitely not talking about morality. And most times you're looking at the more that somebody wants material, generally it's because they're cowardly. The greedier somebody is because they grew up afraid of other people. When we look at the billionaires like Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, can you really imagine this man picking up a girl in a dance in high school? Can you really imagine this man pleasing a woman in bed to feel like a man?
I feel you. I feel you on that one.
To feel safe. If I got billions, big thick walls, nobody can touch me. Maybe I can buy a wife.
But with that steady right there, though, I mean, even if are you saying that getting materialism or this kind of things is a bad thing, though? I mean, if you're doing it the right way, if you're doing it the honest way, are you saying that the people who work hard just because they have these things and sometimes might have a level of prestige towards having these things, is that a bad thing?
I think that you can't replace goodness with idols. And materialism is a form of idolatry. The more I look good, the more I must be good. The more I can feel good about myself because I look good, which is an illusion, right? Because do you think that care whether you look good or not?
Yeah. Do you think that is a social construct, or do you think that is an innate thing?
I think it's a psychological construct. So, okay. So, the more you are afraid, the more you want a security blanket. That's materialism.
Afraid of what?
Oh, people are afraid of how many things. The whole history of the world is what people did with their fear. Every war, every subjugation, everything is about what people did with their fear.
Yeah.
So if
that's an important point right there.
If you're honest about your fear, you get stronger because you confront your fear.
Yeah.
But there's a very, very ancient expression. It's stolen by Islam, but it really comes from Africa. It says, if you search for comfort, you will not find truth. If you search for truth, you may find comfort.
May find, yeah.
So the reaction of somebody who's afraid is just stop being afraid. Give me something to stop being afraid.
Yeah.
But if you want to get stronger, you have to face your fear and traverse it, go through it. And then on the other side of that, you're not afraid anymore because you're stronger.
And sometimes that fear is manufactured.
100%.
For example, they are telling you a number of things
Irrational.
that is happening. Take, for example, the Rona situation. It was put out there that this thing is going to wipe out the world and all kind of things. And, so they build fear in people for people to actually go after taking a particular thing. I think there was a huge problem in that regard right there.
But that works both ways. So let me give you an example. It's an interesting thing because I'm raised, praise God, I'm raised before the internet. Okay. As I said, I worked for Greenpeace in the 1980s out of Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I worked as the assistant to the national media director as a teenager. And back then, it was before we knew the term climate change. They used to call us radical environmentalists.
Yeah, okay.
Whale watchers and all that kind of... Right. But back then in the 80s, we were predicting there would be pandemics, increased hurricanes that define the 5 categories previously, listed.
Yeah.
Right? We described all the events that were going to happen with climate destruction because it was an easy pattern to see, right? When it actually is happening, guess what? Everybody's got a conspiracy theory. It's cloud seeding, it's this, it's that, it's not. Man does not like reality. Man is always trying to recreate reality to his liking and calls that truth.
Yeah.
Truth.
My opinion versus your opinion.
That's right. There is only one reality, and there's 1 billion perceptions of it, or 8 billion, right? So my point is...
I like that. Before you continue, I like that. There's only one reality, one truth, but billion perspectives on it. I like that.
If there's a fly in the room with us, he's living in the exact same reality. He does not perceive it the way we do.
That's true.
Right? If I'm blind or if I see better, I don't perceive it the same way you do.
Yeah, just like sometimes when they say there's an accident and both of us might see the same accident, but sometimes, we tend to have different stories on it. Yeah,
100%. Yeah. The least truthful evidence is an eyewitness account.
Yeah. The least, so what would be the truthful evidence?
Factual evidence.
But what would that be though?
Like a video camera.
A video camera. Okay.
Video an event with 10 people standing there witnessing the same event. Watch the video, then ask each person individually to describe the event without watching the video. You'll hear 11 different things.
But I think when it comes on to that aspect of using eyewitnesses, what they tend to do is to see the commonalities between them and then...
Right, so only through the consistency because on their own it's not objective.
So if you have one witness, though, that can be a problem.
Very much so. That's why they always look for, evidence to corroborate, right? Anyways, we manufacture fear a lot, to go back to what you're saying. And to distinguish between what is rational fear and what is irrational fear is one of the most important things for someone to actually become a clear-minded adult, right? It's interesting that when you travel a lot and you live in different cultures, you start to realize that most of the things they told you about right and wrong inside your own culture had nothing to do with right and wrong. It was about culture. And so, like, the ability to actually be afraid of what you're supposed to be afraid of requires you not being afraid of things you're not supposed to be. Right? Like, dengue is a really bad disease brought by mosquitoes, right? Okay. Leptospirosis, a very bad disease brought by rats. These are 2 very real problems. Okay. How many people kill a snake every time they see it when the snake is the way to stop leptospirosis? The snake is
run
never
from
going to
it.
give you a disease. He's not going to eat your food. He's probably not even going to bite you. But we're so afraid of him through mythologies and superstition that we will kill the snake that eats the mouse that stops the lepto that we can get.
Yeah.
So not being afraid of the right thing makes you destroy the things that could be helping you against the real danger.
So do you think, even on that merit there, bringing it to Dominica,
Sure.
on that merit, do you think that that is what is happening in Dominica? Are we fearful of the wrong things?
100%. All over the world. In every culture I've lived in. I don't think we're different in that way. But yeah, but the difference in Dominica is we have one of the biggest fear out of peer pressure of any country I've ever lived in.
Yeah.
Because we have a micro society in which people worry more about what their neighbor think of them than what God think of them.
Yeah.
And this is where irrational fear makes us become our own enemy, to make us do things that we shouldn't
And
be doing.
then that can then trickle down through generations.
Reinforced like that.
Yeah, reinforce something.
Sure.
It's kind of like when they speak about when they say that you are diabetes run in your family. It is not necessarily diabetes that run in your family. It is the lifestyle of diabetes or individuals with diabetes that passes on
100%.
to you. That's what tends to happen right there.
Well, yeah, and both things are true. Like, so your family for 4 generations eats only fried food, and everybody's getting diabetes. Well, one of the other problems is it's true that if you start eating differently, you probably won't get diabetes, but also you've kind of given more tendency to get it. So now you have to eat twice as good not to get it.
Yeah.
Because
of lifestyle and constant.
Definitely. But I think in DA, our biggest problem, to my mind, is about peer pressure. Because the only way people diminish suffering is by learning new ways
To stop the suffering.
That's right. But if you're so into nobody thinking that you're moving away from the herd, that you're moving with the herd, then you can't get there. Just like in our school, you know, my last kids, their navel string is here, their mother from here, they're born and raised here, they're big people now. But there's never one class in all of the years of school that teaches critical thinking. There's not one class that teaches civic education. So we say we're a democracy, but we don't teach people what it is to be in a democracy.
And it seems like in this present reality that we seem to be living in, bro, it's like it's intentional that this is being done.
100% intentional.
Very intentional, and you're trying your best to say, okay, guys, especially when it comes down to the adaptation of how the world is going, there's literal lacking to then cope with the rest of the world because we are not taught the proper thing. For example, you go to school, they teach you the normal stuff here and there.
We teach obey, memorize, repeat.
That's exactly the case. And even, bro, let me tell you something. I was at Ross University, and one of the things that a number of persons always tend to tell me is that, Felix, don't you trust certain people when it comes to it? I was like, yeah, I trust the people before a certain year, because I remember when Ross started bringing in students.
I used to sell bread by Ross there.
Oh, yeah. And then the students before a particular year, when you know they pass, they definitely successfully pass. They did the work, they did everything that they needed to do. And then I noticed when after that particular year was passed, when a new school came in and they took over and what have you, they were kind of babying the students.
Right.
They were babying them, and sometimes even babying them, they still didn't pass. The pass mark might have been 45%, and they got 40%.
And you remember, Ross University was difficult.
Yeah,
Many of them
very difficult.
In pharmacology, like 2/3 did not pass it. And had to go again.
Yeah, they had to go again. And then you sometimes, even when I used to help some of the students, because I was a simulation technician back then, I knew how to do certain things in the field, obviously. So you do, when they come to ask you certain questions, because you learn it, you know how to tell them to do certain things. And it's like, it's so easy to do a number of things, and they just didn't get it at all. But then at graduate, maybe afterwards they perfected the craft or whatever. But I'm thinking to myself, this person should not be in medical school at all. And then we understand the whole sphere of them just pushing a narrative. YouTube, mind me please, but we pushing a whole narrative.
Yeah, sure.
And it seems like just because people are known as doctors, then they know exactly what they're saying. But you mentioned something very important. They are just doing what they are told.
Sure.
They are obeying what they're being told.
I think, okay, so I've been living in Bush for 24 years now, and I learn a lot about natural law.
Yeah.
And I gotta just give me about 20 seconds to just say something that I think
go
is
ahead.
really important. I fundamentally believe in natural law. So like, okay, I was using this example. If a mango tree makes 250,000 blossoms, maybe only 15,000 of them get pollinated and start to become a mango.
Yeah.
And then maybe only 1,000 of them actually become a mango on the tree. And even out of that 1,000, maybe only 5-6 mango trees grow from that crop that make mango. If a fish lays 1,000 eggs, how many become adult fish that make fish? If you have 1 million men, how many of them are actually compassionate and empathetic? Very few. In nature, the majority of everything is basically food for some other species. That's the way nature's eternal.
Yeah.
Okay.
The hierarchy.
Well, the interconnectivity, not hierarchy. The fact that you always have more dead trees to make dirt and compost than you have standing trees in the forest. How else can the roots feed? You always have more, like every blossom that wasn't pollinated is food for somebody. Bug, bird, whatever. It's the interwrapping, the interconnected thing that makes it all eternal, right? So
no, the reason why I say hierarchy because sometimes the lion would eat something and then that thing would eat something
Sure,
else, and
that
then
too.
so yeah,
That
so there's
too.
like the predator-prey relationship going up the board. Yeah,
Sure, but even okay, use your example. The lion stalks an elk, whatever the heck it is he kills, right? But how many other animals are going to eat from that carcass? And then when he's done, how many other bugs and worms are going to eat from that
from
carcass?
the remainder,
So it's all
interconnect. Yeah,
right. So if you go to 100 doctors, maybe 5 or 10 of them are really good doctors. If you go to a mechanic, 100 mechanics, how many are really ace mechanics?
Yeah,
This is consistent throughout humans.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
true.
people. Okay. So it's really important that those people who do have, you know, that skill set to see things different, that we give them a chance.
yeah.
But if peer pressure is so strong that we
you're
kill
telling
the
it
man
like it is.
who
Yes,
was inventing the thing to save us.
Competence versus incompetence.
And what is an incompetent man the most afraid of? Competence.
Competence, yeah.
That's why our political
Leaders.
regime destroys every qualified human being in Dominica because they see them as a threat.
But with that statement right there,
Sorry.
I want to say something on that. Well, ask a question.
Sure.
I remember there's a professor, and I was listening to that African professor, Professor Lumumba. I'm not sure if you know him. Or you know him. Okay. Professor Lumumba made an important point that always stuck with me. He said the people get what they truly deserve. So do you think what is happening at the top, whether it's Dominica, whether it's wherever, do you think what is happening as a top is as a reflection of the incompetence of the very people?
I see it a little bit more nuanced, okay? Because the only absolute is God. And the rest, us here, is pretty nuanced.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you are more conscious than the other students in the class when you're growing up, your obligation is to bring light to the other students to help them get to your level, not to exploit those other students because you figure you can trick them because you're more smart. Traditionally, historically in the Caribbean, one of the reasons that we became very anti-intellectual is because of all of our smart people were exploiting us instead of using it to improve our life.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
They were using master-slave mentality on their own people instead of uplifting their own people.
Yeah.
So in the way that what you were saying before, for me, I'm checking, no, the people don't deserve that. If I'm born and I'm slower thinker than the guy next door, I don't deserve to be his slave. I do as a human deserve his compassion. That if he knows how to do it better, maybe he comes over to my place and shows me how to do it better.
But I like you speak about deserving. What makes anybody deserve anything though? Why shouldn't they deserve the other aspect? I mean, you're talking about the proper morale of individuals, yet still people with the intellect decide they are going to bring down their own people.
That's right. Which is what they're doing.
So why who says who deserves what?
Oh, okay.
In that aspect right there.
Okay, morality does. So if you're amoral, nobody deserves anything, right? If you're immoral, people should suffer.
So what about the people who are at the top who are immoral though?
100%. They're sociopaths in general.
Yeah.
Look, can we talk real? How real can we talk?
We can talk very real. Trust me. This is BrBpTV Podcast. Be real, be positive. Let's go.
Let me break something down real. Okay. We have a man who is our prime minister in title, but is our dictator in application.
Facts.
Okay. We are a Chinese colony because of the deal he made to access power over us and become that dictator. Okay. We have a psychology in this man of somebody who has no love, who has real issues of child abandonment by mother. I have great compassion for that, but it's true. Okay?
Yeah.
Who was not sure of paternity and who was raised by somebody other than his parents.
Biology.
Now, if he had had somebody who had made him feel really valid and said, I'm so glad you're here, you're worthwhile, he could have grown up to be a loving person. But if he grew up feeling like nobody want me, then he has mépris for his own people. And that's one of the main drivers of the ambition for power. There's a huge difference from a youth in a...
It kind of sounds like a get back.
That's right. It's vengeance. And so what makes a man willing to sacrifice his own people to gain power? What psychology, what going on in his head to say, okay, I'm going to make a deal with the Chinese and they're going to get me into power in exchange for me throwing out Taiwan, and let me not talk too much, but we all know what happened to Mr. Piero. Okay, and Rosie.
And Rosie, yeah.
What is in this man that he could do this? It's not love. It's something very dark. So once this man accesses power, how does he see the citizens of the country that he is ruling?
As his subjects.
His subjects, and also as a threat.
Yeah. Because he doesn't want anybody to come and take over that position.
That's right.
Yeah.
When you thief, you knew you thief. When you murder, you know you murder. When you do crime, you know you did the crime, which is why you think somebody may catch up to you one day.
And it's interesting that you said that. I saw an example of that, where a girl went out and she was stealing. They caught her, she went to prison, and, after prison, she was let go and those kind of things there. They caught the girl again. This time, she was with 2 other girls. So instead of she learning and say, you know what, the consequence, listen, it's interesting, bro. This is very interesting what I'm saying there. She went to prison, came out, got caught again, this time with 2 other girls. She brought in the 2 other girls to go and steal in a particular store. Now, there are 2 other girls in the car and the other one was in another car. While in the car, she was telling the other girl that stealing is wrong. It's a felony now. And they made the laws different. So she knew that the laws increased where the punishment would be worse.
More severe.
And what she decided to do was to bring her friends with her instead of warning her friends and say, hey guys, I experienced this, I learned. So it seems like it's somehow innate in certain people where there's a certain struggle that, or not necessarily struggle, but a certain association that you want. I don't want to struggle. I don't want to be on my own. I don't want to, go down on my own. And I think when it comes down to Dominica, even though we've seen what is happening, we know what is happening at the top. This is not a secret. No. We know it is happening.
100%.
I'm daring anybody here to tell me who was watching my videos, to tell me what I'm saying is wrong. We know that it is happening, but for some reason or the other, it seems like other people want their association too, and they are going down the journey. If everybody, Peter pays for Paul.
I think that's true. I would add something to that, in addition to that. All of us know what is the problem. Very, very few of us have the self-esteem strong enough to believe that we could change it. When you make a people feel powerless,
that was
it's not about they don't understand what's going on. They're not Tebe, we're not Tebe, we're not blind, deaf, or dumb. But what we're not is believing that we can provide an alternative, that we can overcome, and right. So one of the problems in the way that
just before you continue, as you said that there, I remember I always say something, and tell me if I'm wrong for saying this. When it comes down to the political arena, and I'm using a house on fire as the example. If a house is on fire, you know the house is on fire. You are in the house is on fire. You feeling the heat. Does somebody from outside need to come and tell you, hey, your house is on fire? You need to come out. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm
Here's how crazy human being minds are. Here's how crazy human beings' minds are. How many people have died from a rotten tooth because they were so afraid of the injection they wouldn't go to the dentist?
Yeah, a lot.
And if somebody, and they're not saying they were stupid people, they just had what? A fear. Let's go back to where we were in the beginning, because we're touching it again.
Yeah, talk to us.
The history of the world is what you do with your fear. You could be smart as hell, but if emotional fear is running through your brains, you're Tebe at that moment, because it's controlling you, the emotion.
Preventing you from actually becoming who you're supposed to, or doing the things that you're supposed to.
So we are like the people in that burning house. I'm going to use your same example.
Yeah.
The difference is that we don't believe there's a door to come out of the house. So we do need someone to say, look, a freaking door.
So are we closing our eyes and saying, we don't see?
No.
Is that a choice, though?
No. It's not a choice. It's a lack of experience. Here's the thing. Other countries, when they became independent earlier on in the process, Haiti, Cuba, all places, right? Because they had to struggle to become independent, groups of people who were going to be that independent movement had to think about how we're going to run things after. They had to think about the whole process.
Yeah.
But by the time we're becoming independent, it's very late, most other people are independent, and we check in like, just give us the flag, we're good to go. What that really means is that the English just gave common law to the mulatto bourgeoisie who already controlled the society. Who thought Marigot was country bookie and they're sending their kids to England for the summer.
Yeah.
Right? So we never had a constitutional movement. We never made a Bill of Rights. You, me, men, women of adult age who gather together and say, these are our rights and these are our obligations to each other. That's how every country knows themselves politically. We know ourselves culturally. We have a very strong cultural identity. We have zero political identity. We have a very small political class which uses us. But again, citizens are not taught that they're a citizen.
I was just going to mention that. It seems like this problem starts in the very school.
Once again,
and at
curriculum
the home.
of the school. 100%.
But then again, how do you teach these things even at home if you don't know?
I would offer the fact that the people who are in power know darn well that they do not want to put civic education into the school because they don't want to be held accountable.
And they are immoral as well.
That is immorality, right? You're holding your people down to keep them foolish because they're easier to manipulate.
Yeah.
And so look, we have a tremendous amount of wisdom, skills, knowledge, faith. We have great people.
Yeah.
None of them are given power. The people that we give power are the most poppy show individuals of the community.
Yeah.
That talks about the
right.
way that we see ourselves as much as it talks about them. You know, like when you have a religion that tells you that everybody's a thief and everybody's a liar and the only good place is after you're dead, it's really hard to believe in humanity.
Well, that's interesting because, you know, if you're stealing and this kind of things, that's not a good thing to do.
100%, but not everybody's a thief. Not everybody's a liar.
Yeah.
And if you put everybody as sinners and they're all in the same evil basket, then you don't recognize leaders when they come. You wind up voting for the person who hates the same people that you hate instead of voting for somebody who loves you.
But how do you demonstrate love, though? Isn't it by action?
Yes, by the empathetic action of having policy. So if I'm running for an office, The people should not be voting on whether I'm cute, ugly, tall,
or have
short.
dimples. Yeah.
They should vote on the policy that I'm putting forward.
Yeah.
I don't care what my mechanic looks like.
No, but I disagree with you there.
Skill set.
Because sometimes, for example, there are people who are out there and they are contributing to society on the merit of, hey, let me give $100,000 to this charity because I care about the people, this kind of things. Sometimes the reason why they're doing this is because of a tax break, It's
100%.
not because they care about these things,
100%.
but it appears like that's what they're doing. And because it appears like that's what they're doing, people then look up to these people for guidance.
That's exactly why I say policy.
So the makeup of them, the mechanism can be corrupt, even though we've seen them do nice things.
Again, let me just go back to it, because I agree with what you're saying, and I'm very familiar with the fact that billionaires give contributions instead of paying the taxes so that people actually have the social services they deserve. Sure, 100%. But in this, it's not about charity or looking for someone who's been nice. I'd give it a different example, because I think about policy. A government is supposed to propose policy to its people, and that's how the people and the economy are built, because they have an understanding about what opportunities are created by the policy. Not that a government gives you a job. He makes the environment in which we can make businesses
for it.
and build businesses, right? My farm, your whatever, computers, anything. Okay, so that's the crux of it. What is happening is that in like your billionaire, like the case of the charity person, right? If you're only looking at the contribution, you may be fooled. If you look at his tax return compared to the contribution, you ain't fooled no more. You understand? You know what I'm saying? So it's about, again, reality versus perception. If you want to know the truth, you can't just look at something on the surface like you're a profound man. You look at something deeply. So on the surface...
But the reason why I'm saying this is because I'm not just looking at the actions of the individual. I'm looking at the person themselves.
But the way we know this is through his actions. So like, for example, you're a young man in the community in a village. And for years, we see you helping out the elderly. Maybe you have a farm and we see that, you know what, you organized a thing that every weekend you're making sure you're dropping off for all single mothers your extra veggie. Okay?
Does that make me a nice person though?
That makes you a good person.
Because I'm dropping off for the mothers and stuff?
In fact, I must tell you, most of the best people I've ever known are not necessarily nice, they're good. Okay? Nice is something totally different. But anyways, so good. Okay. What my point is that when you see that man doing that, not only do I know this is a good man, but I know that I could upscale that system and make a policy for the village in which multiple farmers do that, and we have no more hungry children. And then we could say, oh, let's do more than just local government. You're doing that so good in Marigot, I want you for power rep. That would be how normal leadership would be cultivated from things that you do and the ways we see you humanly.
Okay, but before you continue, take for example, Scaris. Right?
Yeah.
We take for example,
Scaris.
Right there. We take it like this. Okay, what Scaris, and I've heard a number of persons saying this. So what Scaris tends to do, he tends to build apartments and housing for people who are not able to do so.
That's what the Chinese are doing. That's not why he's doing it.
But that's a good thing. He's doing a good thing.
Oh God. Okay.
What do you think about that?
Right. I'm gonna have to break something down in a way. Okay. So watch that. What is happening in Dominica is not the first time in the world or the first country it's happened to, obviously. What is happening over this last 20-some years is the same thing that the Soviet Union did, and is the same thing that China does now. There are 3 stages to taking over an independent country. Okay? The first takes about 15 years. You have to wipe out the independent farmers and progressive businessmen. Because independent farmers are self-sufficient, they won't beg you. And progressive businessmen are a threat to a dictator controlling the whole economy. Okay. Once you've accomplished that first step, we move to the second step.
Before you get to the second step.
That's what you're talking about, though. One second. Okay, go ahead. I won't forget.
Okay, so okay, good. Now, you mentioned something very important. And as you're talking about overseas, the farmers and this kind of things, it brings me back to Dominica. Do you think that is what has happened to Dominica? Because Dominica is an agricultural
That's how they
nation.
kill
When I
those
speak to a
farmers.
number of persons across the board, especially individuals who know exactly about Dominica overseas, and they're wondering why isn't agriculture being pursued?
Because it is a threat to a dictatorship.
And it creates the independency of
Bingo.
the individuals.
So okay. So totally.
Yeah.
Certainly. Okay. So let me jump back on that for a second.
Okay.
Okay. And then we'll come back. The second step of this is to what we call de-land people. You see, in the Soviet Union and China, the government owns all the land. There is no private ownership of land. Whereas here, we're a country in which we have tremendous citizenry ownership of land. Probably the best in the Caribbean traditionally.
It's
as far as
lessening
how
though.
many people own land in their own country.
It's lessening.
Tremendously because it's a political
because they're
effort.
building apartments for people and this kind of things.
So in the Caribbean, we tend to pass wealth through titles, not through big bank accounts. So the government is then told by China, build apartment buildings, because once you get them people in the apartment buildings, they have no title to pass to the children. The children are now peasants of the government.
Yeah, and it depletes generational wealth.
Bingo. That's the goal of it, right? So build houses for people without title, build apartment buildings so people have no title.
Yeah.
Then you get to the last stage, and that's where we are now. We're in the third stage of this. The third stage is you lock down the financial system so you can't finance resistance or revolution.
So they kill the economy.
Well, they killed the economy by centralizing it to a dictatorship, but here's what they really do. You see, we've seen over the last years all the private banks close, except Republic.
Yeah.
Okay. The Chinese banking system is the only closed banking system in the world. Every other country's banks can look into other countries' banks' accounts to be able to do business with them and know their liquidity, their assets and such.
And there's no money laundering.
Right.
Yeah.
China is the only bank in the world that is a hermetic, closed, opaque system. That is why all the cartels in the world bank their money with the Chinese. That's why Putin banks his money with the Chinese, the Arab countries, everybody who's into criminality, or they want to move money. I'm not saying all Arabs are criminals.
No, I was going to refer to Putin.
Right, but okay, so like for example, it's happening to a degree with us, but the Arab countries right now who know that oil can't be the only fuel because it's destroying the climate, are looking for ways to divest out of oil and invest in other minerals. But they don't want Europe and America to know where they're moving their money. So they just put it in a Chinese bank, and the Chinese will not only hide the money, it's a one-stop shop. They'll money launder it for you too and give you back the clean money. So if you're a cartel, give them 10 billion, get 6 billion clean. They got 4 billion to build an airport. Okay, and the project to build it will actually be a mechanism to wash the money. Okay.
Yeah.
So
especially when that money it constantly keeps growing and growing and growing. Yeah.
So okay. So why is
just saying?
why is Republic Bank still open? Because they haven't finished building the Chinese bank and pressuring the credit unions to close. All the pressure you're seeing being put bureaucratically on the credit unions is to force them to close. Once they've done that and they complete Chinese bank, they will get rid of Republic Bank, and then we have no more MoneyGram or Western Union because we have SWIFT code through Republic Bank.
So in your opinion, you think that the Chinese are somehow going to be building some sort of bank? Because
they are.
And the reason why I'm asking in this, because we've heard that there's some sort of distribution good thing coming to Dominica, and a number of the Caribbean, even the Caribbean islands are finding this a bit interesting, because especially what the trade war that America has with China. And they're saying, well, if that be the case, why are you doing this at this present time? Wouldn't that affect us in some certain region? And it seems like that is connected to that.
Okay, so...
Or do you believe that's completely separate? The distribution center is separate from...
It's separate. This is about consolidation of power. Locking down power. China has no allies. It has countries that it controls. And enemies. The Soviet Union, in all of its 70, 80 years of existence, never had an ally. It had countries that it controlled and countries that were its enemies. From the moment that Roosevelt Scaris declared that we were part of the One China policy, by saying One China policy, it is the same as saying in the British times, Pax Britannica. We are now part of the Chinese Communist Party. We are now a colony of China. If you are a member of the One China policy, you are controlled by China.
But is that the case though? Because I mean, I think
100%.
No, but the United States also believes in the One China policy too.
It does not believe in the One China. You've never heard America say, we agree with the One China policy, because that would say they're sacrificing Taiwan, which they may eventually do because of Trump, but that's another story. The way that it's politics and power, because China's so powerful, they accept to not allow Taiwan to have a seat in the United Nations. That's very different than accepting the One China policy. Okay? They're not saying we agree with it at all. There's never been a declaration like that. So my point just is that being locked down in that way, these 3 stages, is in no way to the benefit of us, the people of Dominica. It is to the benefit of China and the regime of Scaris. That's all.
Well, I was
too far onto the tangent.
But really, okay. Anyways, let's try and bring that whole thing back to Dominica. We're talking about the power and this kind of things there. There was a certain situation that happened to you back then, and it seems like it was a power move from Mmce.
Oh God, yeah.
Can you break down a little bit of that to us? Tell us what's going on in that regard right there. Talk to us.
Sure. So I think it's 3 years now. 3 year ago, or a little more than 2.5 years ago.
2022.
2022, I believe. Okay. The Chinese show up. 4 Chinese men show up in my. I live in Zion. I have 15 acres in Hatton Garden.
Where's Hatton Garden?
Hatton Garden.
Marigot, Wesley.
Marigot and Concord.
Okay.
Okay. I bought my land there on Crapo Hall River. I've been living on that clean river for 24 years. My kids are born and raised on that river. It was our food supply as well. But so 4 Chinese men show up in my yard on a Saturday and tell me that they're going to be my new neighbors. I ask them what they mean. They tell me they're making a mine above me.
A mine?
A mine, a quarry, a mine. And so when they tell me that, I get not only surprised but freaked out, because I know that this is going to mean destruction. So the following Monday, I go to planning and I ask them, what's the position? What's this quarry going on above me? Where's the environmental impact assessment and all of that?
Before you continue, mention quarry. What exactly? And I'm gonna.
Yes, it's deep.
What exactly is that quarry? Is that quarry to mine copper in that region, or is it for?
So they say that they're making tarish for us. In reality, they're mining copper, and tarish is the byproduct. In other words, any stone that's not the mineral that you're digging for, grind that up, baby, that's tarish. Okay. So
you think that there's some sort of other agenda that's going on there?
Here's my evidence, okay? Older Dominicans will remember that many years ago, an Australian mining company came to Dominica and discovered copper in De Branche.
Yeah. And that is a fact. There's copper in Dominica around that region.
Yes. And I forget the name of the company, but people can look it up.
Yeah.
At the time, Afi Martin, Helen Rolls, and some other people protested that, knowing the destruction it would create. And the government did not give them the permit to do the project. Where the Chinese are mining right now is that spot.
Exact spot.
So it kind of defies the odds of coincidence.
No, it's interesting that we've never spoke about this. Me and you never spoke about this. But I've mentioned this before. And I was asking the question, are they building an international airport, or are they mining that area and then build the international airport that they're doing? Because one of the questions I put out was we've constantly been hearing about the increase of the international airport. The funding for it has been increased. I actually have the documentation from back then where it cost less than $300 million to build the international airport.
How many billion now?
No, it's about, well, it's indicated by individuals, not necessarily confirmed, but $2.3 billion. I know it went up to 1.1, then 1.3, and then it estimated to be 1.6. Now I've heard individuals say it's $2.3 billion right now. And now we are hearing that the government needs to go overseas to find a quarry or whatever for them to then, and they also need more money in that regard right there. So when I was speaking about it, I decided before I come on, normally when I do my reactions, I do like to do the research. I might know a little bit of knowledge for it. But I decided, you know what, this is too interesting for me not to do. And I went out, and you can literally Google it. Everybody out there, you can literally Google it and look at copper in Dominica. And look at the areas that it is in. And it is exactly where they're building this international airport. Interesting to that point, the international airport that was supposed to be built under the United Workers' Party was a different area.
Yes. Yeah, I remember.
Why this specific area and all the increasing in money to build this international airport? They had to do the boreholes that would have taken, based off the man's estimate, between 2 to 3 years. How are we building international airport without actually knowing what the land, if the land is conducive to build an international airport?
From my point of view, that's not an airport. That is a Chinese base. From my point of view, there are 3 reasons that the Chinese wanted to establish a colony in Dominica. I'll give you the 3. You've heard for many years that the world is worried about when China is going to make a move on Taiwan. China cannot make a move on Taiwan until it has military leverage against mainland America, because America has 2 bases, one in South Korea, one in Japan, dedicated to protecting mainland Taiwan. The way white supremacist America is, the moment they're threatened on their mainland, they will not protect Taiwan. Now, I must say...
Before you continue, you made a statement there that I disagree. You said before white supremacy America.
Yeah,
I don't agree with that statement right there.
Okay, well...
I don't, but it's your opinion. Okay, all right. Cool,
right.
yes,
and it's economically true, for God's sake. I mean, just look at who controls the money. Look who's controlling the political power and the economic power. And when we know that politics follows economics, politics is never what drives economics. Economics drives politics. Who has the money chooses who's going to be the politician. Right?
Yeah.
It's not a rich man most times. Trump is an exception. There's a few exceptions. But generally speaking, people who go into politics do not have their own financing. They're going towards the wealthy to get financing. The wealthy are looking for people like that to protect their agenda.
Lobbies.
Oh, many right. Lobbyists, lawyers, the whole damn thing. So anyways, we'll leave the white supremacist thing to the side for the moment so we don't get distracted.
Because I think it's a systematic thing when it comes to that agenda right there. But that's a whole other story. Okay. Right there, yeah. Okay. Different things, yeah.
Yeah, it would take another it would be too distractive. But anyways, so the optics have changed in the sense that now Trump is aligning himself with Russia and all of this, so he probably wouldn't defend Taiwan anyways. But at the time in which this political agenda was established, 20-some years ago, that was the vehicle to make sure that they can take Taiwan. It still is. Okay. The second reason is the fiber optic line that connects us to Martinique and Guadeloupe. Since they've been here, they can tap directly into the main line, and they no longer have to have a hacker that can be discovered to spy on European countries and EU. Now, since they're here, they're directly in the main line from an independent country. They're looking directly into the governments of those countries. Okay.
But as you say in that there, I can say there's something that we was found out in Africa. Because when the Chinese build a certain embassy or a certain thing for people to meet, they realized that it was bugged.
Lines. That's right.
Yeah, they realized that the building was bugged. So if you say, I can't say it's true, but I know that it has evidence out there that this has happened. Yeah,
it's the tradition of intelligence services to behave in this way.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the second reason. The third reason is natural resources. Copper, lithium, cobalt, things they need for batteries and computers.
Yeah.
That's why they're here.
But Dominica doesn't seem to be benefiting from this, because we know that there's copper, but some reason or maybe a certain sect of individuals are benefiting from it.
No, because You know, when a man wants something from the devil, he knows what he wants from the devil in his desperation, but he never knows what the devil wants from him after. So the deal that gave up power to allow him to have power signed away the control over all of these things.
Yeah.
This is the fundamental problem. The fundamental problem that we find ourselves in now is that this one man has sold a country to a colonial power. And I must say, even, it's interesting because I've heard Dominicans say that even if we got rid of Scaris, look, we have all this debt to the Chinese, what would we have? Here's an interesting thing that Dominicans should understand. That money was not a legal sovereign loan. To have a legal sovereign loan, in other words, when a country takes a loan from an institution or another country or a corporation, there's one of three ways that can happen. You have a Congress, the Congress votes on it. You have a parliament, they vote on it.
Yeah, prove
okay?
Yeah, prove
you have a king, he's all powerful, he just proclaims it. Okay? Or you have a vote of the people where you have a referendum. Those are the three mechanisms possible to have a sovereign legal loan. None of those things happened.
Yeah, because we don't remember there's any
Scaris
sort of
made the
involvement
deal
in
with
the
the
people.
Chinese.
That's why the people don't know the MOU of the Chinese.
And then after the parliament was a mechanism to try to rubber stamp it, but the actual agreements are made between him and his puppet master. Now this is really interesting because China assassinated two of our leaders to put their own person in power.
Allegedly.
I'm sorry, allegedly.
Allegedly, yes.
Allegedly. Right. And allegedly the Ku Klux Klan is racist. Allegedly. So anyways, if we were to remove this administration, this regime, and we were to go to the United Nations and ask the United Nations to be forgiven for the loan, which is not a legal sovereign loan, you better believe that we got at least 100 countries out there that are being intimidated by China, which will give us their vote. And that illegal debt will be erased. So we should not believe, we'd say in French, the menace, the threat. You know, Scaris likes us to believe that there's nobody else than him that could do it.
Yep.
And we could never live without him.
That's true.
As if we weren't alive before him.
Yeah.
As if we were not successful before him.
And it's very interesting to that point that we are in May now, May of 2025. Yeah. Scaris said about 2 or 3 years ago that he has a mandate that he will only be there up till April 2025.
Right.
He's still here, and it's in May. We are on May 3rd right now. He's still here. So is either he was lying or you forget what he said.
I don't.
Or there's
think
another.
He's capable of talking the truth in public anymore.
I agree with you that aspect.
He's on a narrative
as well.
continuum. When you lie, you have to invent a next lie to cover up that
cover
lie.
the previous.
So you'd have 20 some years of lies. You can't even get to truth.
That's true.
That's
I agree with you on that merit.
Right? So that's a big issue here. You know.
But roping back to the situation that has happened with you, Mmce. Yes. Yeah.
So So a month. So planning tells me they don't know anything about it. They've heard some little rumor that maybe there's a mine they don't know in the area. They don't know it. So they
haven't checked.
Right. They just bramble me and play me like a white ping pong ball. They just bounce me around. So a month later, Bernard Lloyd and Marcus Lestrade show up in my yacht, by me, to show me the plans for the project, in which they're going to put a bridge in the river, damage the river to put a bridge, that they're going to put a quarry, and they assure me that within 2 weeks, somebody is going to contact me about doing a SEIA, a social environmental impact assessment. Because I'm asking them, well, if you're taking my, and to do this project, they're going to make a highway out of the feeder road that comes through my land. Now that's all my land.
Yeah. So on that statement right there, on that note, so you have 15 acres of land, right?
Yeah. Right now I have 13.8 acres.
13. So they took about 2.2.
No, that's from something else I sold. They've taken. I don't know exactly how much. They've. I don't know. I don't want to say a falsity. I don't know the exact.
And give an estimate. Give an estimate.
An acre and more.
An acre or more. Okay. And they haven't paid you for that. None of that stuff.
No agreement. Okay. No payment. No nothing. They destroyed. They contaminated the river so that it can't
that you
drink
take
from it.
water from.
Right. So I have no water for 2.5 years now.
So how do you collect water? How do you?
I have to collect a gallon at a time and carry it up.
And you don't have a vehicle, nothing of that
No,
sort?
I did for a period of time in this last 2.5 years. I don't now.
So you have to carry it on your head all the way?
On my back, yeah. On my backpack. Put a flat gallon in the back of the backpack. And,
okay.
But I can't carry enough to be able to wash, and I can't carry enough to be able to do things. It's just enough to make tea. There's so much contamination in the river now that frequently even bathing makes sores on my skin.
Yeah.
So it's really problematic.
Do you know what they pour in the river?
Well, a lot of it is soil runoff from the mine.
Okay.
So I don't know how much it's mixed with hydraulic oil and the other stuff, because they put a culvert, they dug the bed of the river above me to put a culverted bridge in the river itself for two dumpers to be able to pass side by side. So the contamination level is all the runoff. So that killed out the crayfish and the dome and the millet and the eel and everything.
And the river is supposed to be a protected part of Dominica.
Right.
Interesting.
Not at all. They don't follow any law.
Yeah.
So, of course, nobody came in 2 weeks after these guys, and nobody ever came.
So nobody came to do the assessment?
To make an agreement or assessment or anything. Just a month or so after that, they show up with all their teams and start digging out my land.
So it was all talk?
All talk.
Or maybe they thought that you would have stayed quiet because they gave you something, they gave you some sort of hope.
Right,
they gave you the hope, and then you were like, okay, maybe they didn't show up this week, they'll show up next week, and then they came with their team right there.
When they came up with the team, I basically said to them, well, what's going on? I never heard from nobody. And Bernard Lloyd's answer to me was, oh, well, we're not doing an EIA for you anymore. We're doing an EIA for the mine, and that's already done. It turns out that wasn't even done.
What I think you should have done, you should have asked them for a written statement of that, though, because they could say that they didn't say it.
Well, I was trying to get anything in writing from them. Anything.
Me personally, I would be videotaping you. That's what I would be doing.
I did. I have all the evidence on my phone.
Okay.
I videotaped them stripping out my land. I had to block the excavator with my body. I had all kind of crazy things.
No, I'm talking about videotaping them saying that they will be doing the assessment.
No, but I have videotapes of, for example, when the Chinese show up to ask me how many water bottles they should bring me. Like, you're destroying the river. You're not mitigating my problem.
Yeah.
You're acting as if you just bought a dog and now you have to water the dog.
So they're trying to make you dependent on them to bring water for them.
I live on a river. I bought that land, cash, my land.
Yeah. But did they say, okay, they took about an acre and estimated an acre. Did they say, okay, we'll give you the other side where your land is not? What? Nothing of that sort?
Nothing, no agreement. So by 2023, December of 2023, finally, there's a big meeting up by me in which Bernard Lloyd, Marcus Lestrade, Trotter, the engineer, my lawyer, Kevin Seaman, my surveyor, their surveyor, Coffee, Arabs, Chinese. I mean, everybody was there but the UN. It was like 16, 17 people up there. In which finally, Marcus Lestrade, Commissioner of Land and Survey, says, yes, we recognize that's your land. We cannot encroach further until we sit down and make an agreement. You
should have gotten that right in. That's what I would.
Hold on. It says with my lawyer present.
Okay. Once your lawyer was present,
Okay. 16 people there. Right? Everybody said, okay. 5 days later, they continue encroaching further.
So they were taking more of your land.
Right. They're going deeper each time. Deeper. Trying to widen the thing out. 5 days after that, I come home, I meet an excavator trenching in my land deeper. So I lose my head. I jump down from the Jeep. I had an HRV at the time. I pick up 3 stones, put 2 in my...
You David and Goliath.
2 in the left hand, 1 in the right. And I go up to the Chinese man and I tell him, I mean, almost verbatim, I said, come down. I was cursing. So I can't say it exactly. Sorry, everybody. But I go, come down. It's my land. Stop it. It's my land. Come down. Turn it off. Come down. And so the Chinese man, he turns and he plays like he can't speak English. He goes, and I'm showing him the stone. Now, you have to understand, I've been in Zion a long time. I know stone. I know how to throw stone. I'm 10 feet away from the man. If I wanted to hurt the man,
you could.
He'd be dead. I throw a warning shot. So I break the window behind the driver. I just throw it, because I'm only 10 feet away. I'm so vexed that it don't even shatter the window. It makes a bullet hole straight through. When the driver hears the stone come through the window, this Chinese man learns English suddenly in a miracle. Suddenly he's speaking English.
Yeah.
He says, sorry, turning off, coming down. Speaks the whole damn thing, comes down from the escalator and runs down the road for his Chinese bosses. I myself know how this works, being in Dominica enough years.
Yeah.
I know he's going for Chinese going for police coming for me. So I film one time with my phone the trenching he was doing, because the excavator's still in the same position, and I send over WhatsApp the video to Deputy Superintendent of Police Anthony Wallace, who was also at the meeting, and I'm screaming in the video, you see, they don't follow the law. No. Okay. And I save the other copy for my lawyer.
Yeah.
Now I jump in my vehicle and I drive for the police station, Marigot, because I want to get there before them. As I'm driving up the hill north end, I see the police coming for me on the van coming down the other way. I try to wave to them going, yo, it's me, but they don't see me, they keep going. When I reach Marigot station, as I reach, police go, hey, Ras, they went to go get you. I said, don't have to get me, I'm bringing myself. It's my land. Look what they just do. We had an agreement. No. Okay. As I'm explaining this to them, and I say the exact same thing I said to you, I'm 10 feet away. If I wanted to hurt the man, I would have hurt him. I was warning shotting him because he's playing like he don't speak English, right?
Yeah.
Okay. As I'm explaining this, the Chinese man now comes with the police. And the Chinese man starts screaming at the police, he must surrender, arrest him, surrender. So I look at the police and I say, hold on, are you the police in China or are you the police in Dominica? Because I own land, I'm a citizen, you're a citizen.
And they're encroaching on your land, so they're illegal right there. Yeah.
And I'm protecting my own land, I'm standing on my land when this happened. Right? And they already agreed 10 days ago that they would not go further until they make an agreement to pay me.
And before you continue, it seems like there's because I remember there was a particular instance, because my brain works a kind of a way where you see something and I realize something actually happened somewhere else. It's like, who exactly is the main person? Because even if somebody who is that recently took place in Salisbury, where police said something and then the guy went and they arrested him, even though the police said that they wouldn't arrest him and this kind of things there. So was the necessary or all necessary people who have the power over everything, were they all there?
Yeah. Including Carl Murad from Mmce, all of them.
So if they were all there and they still 10 days later started doing things, especially not even informing you about it.
Right. It's in my face. It's just like, you're nobody. So, yeah.
That's strange. Look,
this is the same Carl Murad when I had the one meeting with them that he offered to buy off my land at a quarter of what the price was that I had just sold an acre for.
Yeah.
Okay.
They wanted to buy all
10 out of the acres.
Yeah.
That I had. And when I explained to him about the river and they were destroying the river water line, that's my water supply. He told me, you've been squatting for 20-some years. You have no rights to the water. We'll tell you what your rights are.
So even before we continue right there, you arrived in Dominica in 2001. And then you had your land in 2000.
I bought the land. I made the agreement for the land in 2001. The transfer of title was July of 2002.
Okay, next year.
I get my citizenship in 2006. I didn't buy no citizenship.
So you're a Dominican citizen.
Dominican citizen.
Okay.
Naturalized.
Naturalized, yeah.
Spent the time, made children, bought land, big farm, feeding the country. No CBI nonsense.
Yeah. All on your own, yeah.
On my own, legit.
And not... not recently, when you guys have the meeting, afterwards, the squabble, the 10 days came, the guys then tell you, who was the guy? Was he a Dominican official? Was he an overseas official who's telling you that you are squatting on the land? Who told you that?
He's an Arab named Carl Murad, who is...
So a foreigner told you, as a citizen, that you are squatting on the land. Sure. Interesting.
Sure. The same as, for example, here's some way. Look, as you said, I've been there since 2001.
Yeah.
Somewhere around 2010, Dawasco does a water project to supply water to North End, Carib Territory, and Marigot. And it turns out they run the pipe along my land.
It turns out, so they didn't let you know.
No, I came home one day and met them.
They were doing it. Okay.
Told me it was announced on the radio. I said, that's interesting. Does the radio own my land?
Well, I think they said it announced on the radio on the basis of being gazetted.
Right.
But they should have at least informed you. I mean, come on.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's okay. But at the time, as I said, I'm a single father, and my kids were little, and we were really kind of poor, and I was struggling. And I had clean water from the river, so I didn't argue with them over it. I just said, you're going to need to make some agreement with me. And they said, okay. I met with James and Winston, and they had said, when we finished, it was Ace Construction was doing the project. When we finish, we'll make an agreement with you.
Yeah.
That never happened. I didn't have money to fight with them about it. I had my water supply. I didn't worry.
But there's a trend that I'm noticing, because you're saying that a number of persons made promises to you before. They did not keep it.
This government has never upheld any promise.
No, but I'm saying they make, because this is why I keep saying that you should have it written, because they are making promises to you, they haven't kept it. They come back, they make another promise to you, they haven't kept it. They came back, they make a promise to you, haven't kept it, and for some reason or the other, you didn't decide, okay, I need to get this in writing. Because one of the reasons why I always believe in writing, you can actually show it in court with the person's signature and say, hey, this is this, and they compensate it for it. Because sometimes the only way you can get to people is when you touch their pockets.
Sure. Understood.
So that's why I'm saying, why didn't you go down that line right there?
Because the truth was, them children were little, and I was grinding and trying to keep us going.
Yeah.
And getting food for the day and getting...
So you're really busy.
It was me. I have no other family in Dominica.
Yeah,
and
that's
I'm
true.
in Bush alone with multiple children. And in May...
And those you met in Dominica.
On May 21st of 2010, my home was burned down.
So you had to build it back yourself.
I lost $250,000 US in everything I've ever owned.
Wow, okay.
So we were in a really destitute situation. Anybody from Marigot side knows the story. My point is this, though, that when they destroyed the river water, I went to Dawasco and I said, look, it's 15 years you're running the pipes on my land. It's no problem, really. I'm not troubling you. But now I have no water. Hook me up to water. I'm not going to pay you for water when you owe me 15 years of rent. I'm one old man. How much water can I drink before I die? Really? So the guy says, okay, let me just check with government. Then he gets back to me and says, government tells me that's not your land.
But don't you have the paper to prove?
100%.
So didn't you show it to them or
100%.
something? And they still tell you it's not your land?
100%.
What is going on?
And government surveyor, Coffee, confirms it's my land. Kevin Seaman, confirms it's my land. Jeremiah David, who in 2001 did the original plan and survey, came into the lawyer, confirmed it's my land.
But the government somehow believes that it's not
your land. The government doesn't want to admit it's my land for Dawasco, otherwise... But
But whether they admit it or not, it's your land.
It is my land. It's a fact.
They don't have to admit anything.
100%. But here's what's going on. Do you remember when we said earlier, when you make one lie, you have to make another lie to cover up the lie? Here's one of the problems from this Kunumunu government, is that the government is trying not to pay me for land they've taken from me. If they affirm to Dawasco that is
your land, they have to pay you.
It accelerates their own liability to pay me for the land they've already taken.
But whether they believe it or not,
doesn't matter. Doesn't change the
it's
fact.
still your land. 100%. You have the paper.
100%. I have the title. Show me the title.
So my question here is: they say it's not your land. You have the documents to show it's your land. Right. What's next? What's going to happen next? What is?
I've had a total of gone through 5 lawyers right now.
5. Why 5?
Okay, the first lawyer, I don't want to call anybody's name because I think that's something we're not. I don't know if it's okay. Yeah. So first lawyer is actually a very honest and good lawyer, but she has just too many cases. She's very well known as one of the people.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. But she was overloaded, so she'd given me to her colleague. Her colleague got transferred to be the registrar in Antigua after about a month or so. Yeah. And then she said, "Well, I can't take you on because, as I told you, I'm too busy." Yeah. I get to another person.
So the third one.
The third one crooks me to the wall. Plays like she's really concerned. Spends at least 6 months telling me next week she's filing the injunction.
And she didn't.
Doesn't. Because of the thing you mentioned on Emo News, is a foreign man, when he saw that, financed me to get lawyers and surveyors.
Okay.
So he was loaning me money to do all of this. This crooked lawyer writes a letter to the man who is financing it and says He's so emotional, I think he's dishonest.
About you?
About me. To the man who's saving my life by financing to pay her.
To pay her instead of you?
Because I can't pay her. I have no money to pay the lawyer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay.
You understand what I'm saying? Okay. She was present at the same meeting when they say they have to sit down.
The third lawyer.
Right.
Okay.
When we have the big meeting, they have to sit down and pay me for the land. Right. But in that same days after, she starts to tell me you need to find a new lawyer. Because as soon as they break the agreement, she doesn't want to hold them to account. And she doesn't want to file the injunction. So then I give up on that eventually because I'm like, this is impossible.
So you go to the fourth lawyer.
I go to a fourth lawyer who tells me she doesn't think that the regime is going to even let it get filed. This is something that's going to have to sit down and discuss in an agreement.
No, but wait. You see, I sorry for pausing.
Sure.
When people say certain things, I just get vexed.
Sure, please.
You know. But how can she say she cannot file it because she doesn't want some sort of level of retaliation? But it's your land.
That's right.
But
the lawyer is protecting their bourgeois position.
That is what I'm thinking as well. So maybe the lawyer is
not
also corrupt.
The victim. Look, the government now, as the situation is now, my brother, the government does not actually have to give a bribe to a lawyer to corrupt them. All they have to say is, if you represent that person, I'm not going to give you no business in the future. And who does the lawyer make more money from? One client or 10 years from a regime? Our lawyers want more to be a bourgeoisie than a lawyer. They want to protect their economic class more than they want to protect the victims of injustice.
But it's interesting that you're mentioning that because I actually said that a number of times. Because when you look at places like the United States, some of the lawyers come out and they go after certain people.
Yeah, boy.
And I'm asking myself, why don't we see this in Dominica? Why don't we see the lawyers who have gotten a number of monies from clients and whatever decide upon themselves, okay, you know what? I'm going to take on this case. You don't have to pay for it. Whatever comes from it will benefit both sides or whatever. Why don't the lawyers in Dominica decide, you know what? There's too much corruption going on, too much craziness going on. Let me take on that case and then push forward.
Let's every one of us as a human being is just the result of what we went through as a child. We live to be 100 years old. We're still just the result of whatever we went through as children. So when you ask that question, which is a really, really valid question, I would add a question. And here's the question I would add. What kind of person in Dominica becomes a lawyer? And what is their ambition in that? If you
see, it comes back to the mechanism of the individual.
Right. So if you really you think you're clever, you think you're smart, you think you're better than a lot of other people, you think you're really good, you can win any argument, true or false, you may be a very good lawyer.
Yeah.
What does that have to do with morality or protecting victims or liberating black people from down oppression?
Yeah.
Nothing. It has to do with somebody who comes from a certain position in society, who wants to get to a certain position in society.
Look, and they want the perks that will come with it as well.
And so that means that they will always be more on the side of power than the morality of their function in the society, because a lawyer is a function that's critical. Look, there's no accident that the majority of politicians are lawyers. There's no coincidence that we've had for, 25 or more years, sitting in the parliament, never voted on the ability to sue a lawyer. So the lawyers themselves who become politicians stop the people
from going after them,
from holding them accountable.
Yeah.
So
what would solve that problem?
Honestly?
Yeah.
A Bill of Rights and a Constitution made by the people.
Who would create it? The people?
Us.
But who will pass it?
Well, we're going to have some...
It comes back to a blocking point right there.
We're going to come up with some boundaries of what we can say on internet. Because I also don't want to be arrested for talking truth.
Once you're saying stuff you can back up, they wouldn't bother with you. I mean, it's your land.
Under the existing regime, there is no human rights in Dominica that trumps Chinese or Dominican political interest. Once it's about money or the power of government of the Chinese, it wins.
But that's what it seems to appear to be. That's what it seems to appear to be.
Okay? They sent I've been through so much thing for my own right. Down to them. Here's a funny story, and it's true, fact, provable. I'd said to Dawasco, please give me water. They come back, they say it's not your land. I say it is my land. It's been proven and proven.
Did you show them the paper?
Yes. So then I send them an email voice note. And I say, this has been proven and reproven by both government surveyors, my surveyors, and the original surveyor who did the plan. This is my land. I've already had a meeting 15 years ago with Dawasco who confirmed it's my land. Because back then they were saying they would make arrangements with me.
Yeah.
How could that have changed, right? Okay.
They would make arrangements, meaning they would give you water as well?
No, back in the day when they first ran the water line, they said they'd pay me rent.
They pay for the...
pipe.
Okay.
Right, all those years ago.
Was that in writing or just in saying?
No, just verbally. At a meeting with Miss James and Mr. Winston.
Yeah.
So I then sent a voice note to the head of Dawasco, Magnus something or other. I forget it. Forgive me, I forget his last name. In which I state, if you are telling me that my land is not my land, and that the pipe that I'm seeing on my land is not your pipe, well, you won't be bothered by the fact that I'm going to dig the pipe out of my land, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to save a copy of this for my lawyer, and I'm saving a copy of this for when the police come when I dig your pipe out of my land. Because it's my land.
Yeah. And they're not paying you for it.
You're not paying for it.
Even though they said that they would.
And I have rights to have water. If I bought land on clean river water and you deprive me of that water, what, I'm supposed to just die?
Yeah.
Right? So a couple, 10 days later, I'm at Where's Flat Marigot in the night. The police come on me and say, hey, Ross, we need to bring you station. Why are you bringing me station? Well, because you threatened to destroy government property. I say, hold on a second. I'd like you to listen to this voice note. Make the officer listen to the voice note. He goes, whoa, Russ, that's not a threat. That sounds like you're asking for your rights. I said, bingo, voila.
Yeah.
Let's go to the inspector now. They bring me to the station. The inspector's really threatening and aggressive with me in the beginning because he thinks I've done something wrong.
On your land.
Right? And I say, hold on. I'm going to make you listen to the voice note, and I'm going to go outside and smoke a cigarette. The time for you to listen to that.
Yeah.
When I come back in, you tell me if I threatened anybody. When I come back in, his face has changed. Russ, sounds like you're trying to get your rights. We can't do anything about it, not even with the Chinese, because we can't stop it.
So the Chinese trumps the police rights to hold up the law.
Every time. And I tell you that I've been there more than 16 times to Marigot Station. And you know what they did to Marigot Station after they refused to arrest me for the excavator? I didn't know this till 6 months later. They transferred everybody out of Marigot Station because the Chinese were vexed that they didn't arrest me. And it's one of the policemen from that station who saw me in town and said, Russ, you know they transferred us all out of there? They still don't pay you yet?
So where does that leave the right for the people, though? The rights
There's no
for
right
the
for the people till the people rise up and remove the regime.
How? Let's not incriminate ourselves.
That's right. That's right. But if you want a historical fact, here's an historical fact for you. There has never been any country, not one country, at any time in this world in which a man took power through force like that who came out through an election.
Yeah. Burkina Faso at present.
Anybody who's willing to kill to take power does not come out through the will of the people and an election. And the Chinese, who have done a whole lot of nonsense to be able to take control of us, are not going to be thrown out by us in an election.
As you said that, I remember the situations that has taken place with Burkina Faso, and look right now, even I think there's another African country that sent out the French from
Mali.
Mali.
Western Africa,
Mali.
Mali.
But no, there's another one as well.
Senegal.
Chad.
Oh,
I think
Chad was one of the
Chad
first.
recently.
Chad was one of the first to start getting into that.
But I think they recently removed them. There's another one that 100%. Removed the French from their their gold mines.
That's right.
So it seems like that trajectory,
Finally, I wrote about this in 1990s, predicting this was the only way we have out.
Yeah.
See,
you have to take out the colonizers.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing. It's not really a tangent. You'll see it's really related. You know, in like Saudi Arabia and UAE, these Arab countries, everybody's wealthy. Every citizen is wealthy. And the reason is simple. The moment they discovered oil, they decided that they make a corporation for the country in which every citizen is a stockholder.
Yeah.
So from the time you're born as a Saudi Arabian, you get
the stipends and stuff. Yeah.
Right. Every year, the dividends from the investments. Right. Dominica is being raped.
But before you continue, St. Kitts actually does that with their CBI program.
Yes.
St. Kitts does that.
Yeah.
So it's not too far-fetched. We don't have to go right all.
That's right.
Yeah.
But in this case, I want to tie it to that for a particular reason. It's about resources.
Yeah.
Not about CBI, but actual resources. That now the world powers are desperate for resources, for technology. If we made a national corporation of Dominica that controls everything from copper to lithium to all minerals, so that if anybody of another country or a business here wants to extract those resources, everybody in Dominica profits.
Yeah. But they don't want that to happen.
They don't want that.
They want to keep the people down so they'll be dependent on them.
Keep the people down, let the colonial master, just like England used to do, bring it all back for Mother England or for Mother China.
Yeah.
Right? And because Scaris and his collective do not care about nature. They do not care about love between people. They do not care about preserving the health of Dominica. They care about money and power.
I can agree with that because that's what we see.
That's what we see. We are saying to the world we're the nature island while we try to cover it in cement.
Well, they claim the Dominica is the nature island of the Caribbean. We don't preserve our rivers.
100%.
You know, a few years ago we had a drought in Dominica. Can you believe that?
I saw my river go so low that I thought it was a puddle at that point.
And the thing is, they are doing nothing to at least bring back the rivers. Build trees around the rivers so there's less evaporation. You know, those kind of things. They build dams so that the river can build up, and even turning the dams into places that can provide electricity. Hydroelectricity can be produced from these things. We hear in Domlek complaining about the water going down and so, but build them.
No, the reality
no
is
solution to the problem.
Village by village can produce more than enough for each village's
I agree.
needs. Decentralizing it brings that power back to the people, takes the cost out of the people's pocket, the way coup de main used to. When we used to do coup de main, when we'd help out on somebody else's farm, it made farms like mine and others productive. Why? Because we didn't have to pay labor costs and we could actually profit from the products. We need to take what are traditional strengths of Dominica and upscale them for the nation instead of taking away all of our good behaviors and try to copy somebody else's system that can't work.
But I think that starts at the head though. Because when the head says, if not CBI, what else? That tells you a lot. And then previously, before stating that if not CBI, what else? They stated, if not VAT, what else?
Right.
VAT, you tax the citizens. That
basket. I made
of course we were the bread basket.
4,000 a week from my farm. I hired 10 people full-time, 4 people part-time. When July month came, everybody had already bought the books and uniform. It wasn't the August month panic and the September for the last books and October for the last shoes. We were making money. We were making more money out of the earth than anybody making in an office building typing on a computer.
9 to 5s. Yep.
Right. But the people who we put above us are not respectable people.
Yeah.
They are people that we think are cool. They're people that we think are pretty
because they have the money.
They look good. But I mean, I always say it. The devil looks the best. That don't mean I want to sit with him.
That's true. So the question here is what has to happen with you going forward when it comes down to the circumstance? All these meetings, empty promises.
Block road.
Huh?
Block the road by me. I own that road.
Yeah.
If I could I've been trying desperately to get people just to come. Park your vehicle up on the road.
Yeah.
I own it. There's no crime. I have the title that shows that I own it. And block that up until they actually come, sign a piece of paper, sign a check, because I don't even trust the paper without the check.
I agree, yeah.
I kind of like Vance on that level there.
But they have, what has to happen has to happen.
Thank you. And I know that I don't have a navel string there. So I don't have the same backup as other people.
Yeah.
But I beg anybody who cares about truth or rights to help back me up and block that road, because that's the only way.
Was that one of the reasons why you had to let your children go because you could maybe sustain him in Dominica? What? Would you have liked to keep them in Dominica?
I wish they were here, and I wish we were farming together. But when you destroy my farm, we can't be doing that.
So you have to leave.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things is like all of our bright children, for the most part, unless they've already got a situation here, have to go out there for opportunity.
That's true, because there's a lack of opportunities in Dominica.
They're brain draining us, they're muscle draining us, they're skill draining us. All they want is peasants.
Yeah. So they're taking out the people who can actually challenge them. And as you're saying that there, it's very obvious, they're taking out the people who can actually challenge them because they think for themselves, whereas leaving those in Dominica will just be like, okay, well, you say that, okay. Or there's a video that a friend sent to me where a guy he's finding himself, he said, well, I just live in life, I just taking it easy. And it seems like that is the mentality that they're looking for. People who don't fight against.
If you are incompetent and you knew that you got your power through unjust means, your biggest fear is somebody who is competent, who exposes how much of an ass you are or how wicked you are. So you're going to fight down the best of your own people because those who you see as a threat. If you're actually a leader, you want those people because they're going to build up your economy.
And they can push you to do better.
But our leaders don't make money from the economy.
Outside.
They're making money from bribe, from side deal, from this and that.
And as you say in that day, one of the things that is evident that I've seen, or maybe I'm misrepresenting it, or whatever individuals could, or maybe I could, it's it will already. But when the Prime Minister stated that a foreign entity gave him a Jeep as a gift, and it had to be stopped. He was driving it in Dominica, going all over the place and stuff. A foreign entity gave a Prime Minister. The question you would then have to ask, what did you do so good for some foreign entity to want to give you a brand new vehicle that you can drive in Dominica? What did you have to exchange?
Quid pro quo.
That?
This expression, quid pro quo?
Yeah.
So that's the quid. What was the quo?
Yeah. Exactly.
There is an exchange going on here.
And the thing is, they're not telling the people, yet still they come in and say that they're transparent.
Yeah, but hold on a second. Look, because it gets so out of hand at a certain point. We know what the salary is for a prime minister.
Yeah.
There's no way on God's green earth that with the salary that he's supposed to gain that he can have the wealth that he has.
Yeah. I mean, it's obvious when you've seen these things, but the thing is people want to ignore it because, what human creatures are humans of repetition.
But they also don't believe that somebody would do better. I'm going to go back to, I'm going to cut you off for a second.
That's true as well. That's true as well, yeah.
It's like, when you hear Dominique say, boy, if it was me, I mean,
But they don't know it could actually be them.
Right. and the idea is that we so assume that everybody is corrupt that we never actually put someone honest forward.
Oh, you're saying the truth. Because I've heard people saying, even if you put the other side there, it's one thing when you have evidence that if you put the other side there, they will do the same thing. But it's another thing when you don't have evidence, they've never been there before, but you believe for some reason or the other that the other one is going to do the same thing. And it's strange that that the thing that you don't want the other one to do, the present one is doing. Right. At least, my God, common sense will say, okay, let's try to remove that one because we know that this one is doing this.
But do you know the best metaphor or comparison to our situation right now? Is an abusive marriage.
Yeah.
We're the wife getting beaten, and the husband is saying, hey, if you didn't have me, it'd be much worse. You'd have nothing.
Yes. Yes.
Why are you giving us the blues? And it's like, well, you should be glad it's me.
Yeah. Or it could be worse.
It would be
worse. You die or something.
At least I'm giving you a bed to sleep in. And that is the opposite of what Nom Ter Dominican was.
The Dominican you knew before.
That's right. I mean, look, we had disputes. We're human beings. We had issues. But nobody went hungry. Nobody broke down on the road without other cars stopping and we all get around that, lift that up and bump it off the road. Not because we had some angelic love, but because we fundamentally understood it could happen to me too tomorrow. And I want someone to help me.
Oh, bro, you hit it.
That is what Scaris has destroyed. That's what the ultimate way that he destroyed the glue of us as a people is the most magical, valuable word in the world. It's consideration.
And it's interesting that you're mentioning this. You know what that popped up in my mind?
Tell me.
The hospital.
Oh, you mean the morgue-pital?
The morgue-pital. It seems like some people or the other. And I remember when Scaris was on stage and he was telling people he can send his family and his friends, paraphrasing, he can send them overseas for better medical attention.
Right.
Then he asked the people, bro. Right. He asked the people who voted for him to do better for them when it comes down to the medical fraternity. He asking them, what about you guys? Can you imagine that? And then the very same people who apparently they're healthy now. I can think of two individuals, I won't call the name. One of them waited 9 to 12 hours in the hospital, the same hospital that they're voting for the regime. And realize, I've heard that person now is vexed with the regime that they're supporting. I don't know, they may be saying that to some people, but when sometimes when campaign come, they give you a $2,000 or $3,000. You know what
that is? That's I come into your house, I steal $100,000, and on the way out the door, I give you $100 back, and I tell you, give me the key.
Yeah, that's what's happening.
And is my money
people
stealing,
thinking,
and you give me back my money?
And people are thinking that somehow they are helping them by doing this. They're literally keeping you down.
That's right.
They're making you slaves to their system.
100%. But you cripple self-esteem. It all comes back to self-esteem.
That's true.
And from self-esteem to consideration of others. Consideration is the most valuable thing in a society, and it's free.
Yeah.
When we lost consideration of each other and we all start to feel like we're each the victim.
My own, or for me. Right. Selfishness.
We selling out each other so quick. So here's the thing interesting what you said about the hospital. I've lived in many countries and I've heard many political narratives and bullshit. Bull stuff, sorry.
Yeah.
All right. And they're always talking about development. We need somebody to come foreign development, investment for development. I swear to you that the only development that matters is human development. And that once humans believe in themselves,
bro, I tell you,
they can build everything.
This is the first time we've actually met, bro, and you're saying exactly what I'm thinking. When it comes down to the development of Dominica, bro,
it's us.
It is not the people that are developing. They are saying, okay, I remember I've been, bro, let me tell you, I have been to events under this present government where they have ceremonies for roads. I have been there eating sandwich and cake. I say, yes, I go in there, clip a thing. Let me go and eat some sandwich and food. Sure. I have been to different events and things where they're making a whole thing about building roads and so forth. Today, in Portsmouth, they built a tennis court. One individual met me, talking about the different things. How can I be saying this? Because I was measuring what Scaris was saying versus what Mamo was saying. And it seems like what Mamo was saying contradicting what Scaris saying that they were doing. So anyways, I asking the person, okay, fine. We have a new individual here representing Portsmouth. What has been done in Portsmouth? That individual has been there for what? Almost 3 years now? Anything. What have they done? The person say, look, we build a tennis court, we building down there. I tell him, okay, tennis court is not bad. Listen to me, bro. A tennis court isn't bad. Some individuals might want to play tennis and so forth and so forth. But how is that any sort of elevation for the people of Portsmouth? How?
Look, candy is sweet, but it don't substitute for food. You can give my child a sweetie when he needs a meal.
Yeah. No nutritional value.
Helping him.
Yeah.
So, look, you measure a successful society,
by
government,
the
people by how less people are suffering, not how many more people become millionaires.
Yeah.
So, like, we can clearly see that we have way too much hunger and poverty and not enough opportunity. There's nothing you can build as an object that creates opportunity. Policy makes opportunity.
Yeah, it gives room for opportunity.
Right?
Yeah.
And policy requires some form of legitimacy. So if you're making your money by thieving people, you're defying the ability to have policy. You're stopping that.
But you're making sure that the policies that are put in place do not affect you and your ability to further volley.
We call that downpression, not public policy.
Downpression? What?
Downpression.
Downpression. Okay.
Yes,
okay.
as Rasta would say, instead of saying oppression, as if it was going up.
Yeah.
But actually,
downpression. Okay, I get you.
Boot on the back of my neck.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the problem here is like we mentioned about the burning building situation, and we talk about, okay, fine, people from outside might need to come and tell, oh, look at door there, you can come out there and this kind of things there. But then when you have a set of people who literally see in the door, I think sometimes that person in the burning building need to wake up and realize, hey, I need to open my eyes for me to move. Because if the people, remember, you stated that the people need to have some sort of moral understanding at the top. If they are all immoral, or they corrupting those who are moral. Because one thing, you start there, you have a bad apple, it corrupts the others.
Sure.
And when you involve in corruption, you say, well, you better don't talk because look at what you do there. So you're bringing them to rope them in so they are all siding with you. Then it will be the responsibility of the people who are in the burning building. How else can you come out, bro?
No, my brother, unfortunately, I wish it was so. I don't think it is so.
But how else can you come out from that burning building when the people who are supposed to tell you it's burning, there's a door there, they are not telling you that's there?
Because unfortunately in this world, it takes somebody who's walking by outside who has enough heart to break down the door and let you out.
So you have to carry people out.
We always need someone outside of our panic to tell us to calm down. When you're in the panic itself, you don't tell yourself to calm down because you're already panic. That's the definition of panic. It's like you don't expect a crazy person to be rational. The definition of crazy is you're not rational.
Yeah.
Okay. The definition of being oppressed is that you're not given access to the tools of your liberation. So, whether it is, for example, Dominicans who have gone foreign who come back and they're like, nah, I've seen how functioning democracy
Societies
works.
work,
This is not acceptable, right? So he breaks down that door because you're inside, you're just feeling the flame, right? When I was very young, I wrote a thing that said, when you're standing in the fire, you can only feel the flames. Only when you step back can you see which wood is burning. The perspective to perceive a solution requires not being in the drama at the time.
You have to be outside.
You have to have perspective. I cannot judge the speed of a vehicle if I'm also driving. I have to stop my vehicle and then clock him. So we're not all in the same level of distress. And certainly not at the same time. You may be hungry tomorrow. I may be hungry today. Okay. When I'm hungry, that's the day you need to see me and bring bread.
Compassion.
Right. One of our biggest problems, and it goes back to the consideration thing and low self-esteem, is that a victim always lacks empathy for others' suffering. When you see yourself as the victim, you don't feel sorry for the other guy. Now, you know, in Dominica, we like to blame the victim. Oh boy, that could never happen to me, boy. Boy, if that was me, now, that couldn't happen to me. Boy, if it was me, I'd do this and that. And then when he gets in that situation, he realizes he can't do this or that. Now he's in it, he realizes it's a little different than he thought. Okay.
Because he's in this situation now.
We are now panicking as we get down pressed further. And we're starting to turn against one another because each one of us feels like a victim and feels betrayed. It's a terrible, vicious circle. The only escape from that is to link back up.
But it's also very interesting, though, that you're starting to fight the very people telling you, hey, come up from the burning building. That is what is happening right now in Dominica. They are fighting the people, telling them, hey, there's a door there.
Every time.
Sometimes, look, may come. Let me hold you and let me bring you out. They are fighting the very people.
Because of their, let's go back to the same roots.
Comes back to the self-esteem issue too. And fear.
If you do not have the self-esteem to believe you can overcome the fear with a positive solution,
you will state in,
you're afraid master's going to come and beat you for getting uppity.
As you say,
don't you get uppity, boy.
I love when you say certain things and I can pinpoint examples. There's a situation that took place in St. Joseph where a guy was fed up of the PALREP. He came out, he support the PALREP, you know. He's fed up, they're not doing anything. There are people in Maos telling the PALREP, hey, what are you guys doing for the youth? And the pilot will respond, I'm not your God. In St. Joseph, they are making noise and the guy wants to rally people to come together and so forth and so forth. He knows that the person is not doing good for the community. In fact, not doing anything at all for the community. So he stands up. He finally opens his eyes in the burning building and say, hey, you know what? Something needs to be done.
Right.
But you know what happened?
His community started yelling at him down. And,
exactly.
Sure.
And then he had to apologize. 100%. So now he's back in the very burning building that he knows is burning.
100%. Torturous.
You see how crazy that is?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
So then you have a community of individuals that literally trying to keep you there.
You know who Mahatma Gandhi was? You know who Mahatma Gandhi
is? Yeah.
So Mahatma Gandhi said, first they ignore you, then they insult you, then they try to kill you, and then you win. If you know you're on a righteous cause, those are the stages you have to go all the way through.
The great book says that as well. Yeah.
So... well, they probably took it from Gandhi.
Well, I think they probably took it from the great book.
Oh, the great book.
The Bible I'm talking about, yes.
Sorry. I think the Torah. But anyways, so we're in that conundrum. We're in that situation right now where we need not to blame the victim. And we need to have the courage to link arms.
But I also think individuals need to see themselves as victims too. Because they are in the same struggle against people who are perpetrating as a collective.
That's true.
But
that's my point.
Not to stay there, but to realize that they are victims and say, hey, I'm a victim, not anymore.
Right. I made a little distinction. I think that a collective understanding is that we're being wronged and we're being victimized. But what I was trying to say is like when you feel like a victim is like when you feel it's especially about you. And in this case, it's not about any one of us individually. It's about the evil and the intention of evil of those above us.
That is, doing to the people.
Right? Which is what's making us turn against each other, blame each other for things that we're both being victimized from above, and we're trying to get out from under it. We're like, it's your fault.
Yeah.
It's your
Instead
fault.
of looking at who is actually causing it.
Right. That's the reality of it, you know, for me.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean when I say about victimhood. You know, it's not about... because most of the time when somebody suffers, their first question is, why, God? Why me? It's not fair.
Yeah.
They don't think about, like, you know, like you step out of your house and you trip one day, and you think, that's an unlucky day, man. What's going on? Somebody tried to tie me, man. But the 999 days that you stepped out from there and did not fall down, you didn't say to yourself, boy, I'm blessed.
And sometimes you that put the thing outside that tripped you in the first place.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
So it is really about, you know, not getting distracted, not turning against each other, keeping the aim of our anger where it deserves to be targeted. Because it's going to take 50 or 60 men who are true patriots to come together and change this.
I mean, look at what happened in Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
And they're doing things actually working for their people.
And I would even make the comparison to like a real terrible dictator like Assad in Syria, in which other countries got involved in war. And at the end of the day, it was their own people that finally said, nah, we're done.
Yeah.
And his own soldiers were like, we're not defending you. Kill him.
Yeah. Kind of like what actually took place in Haiti as well.
100%.
When they sent the soldiers to fight against the Haitians, and then some of the soldiers decided they sided with the Haitians to fight against them because they realized...
Yeah. 100% that's going to happen here when more than 50% of our police force doesn't like the regime either.
And the reason why I'm saying is because one of the problems that we have in Dominica is the lack of proper electoral reform. Even though we had electoral reform. So I'm thinking to myself, individuals, even if they go overseas for you, because I believe that Dominica wants change. I believe the majority, not all, let's say about, 55%, 50, 60, yes, or 70 once change. What the government tends to do is they go overseas for overseas voters to come back to tilt the scale. So I'm thinking from that example that we just mentioned there, people, they go overseas for the voters, they will come into Dominica and they will turn against the government.
This is why last time Labour had them take a picture of their ballot.
They could do that?
To confirm.
I've heard that, but I didn't know if that was true or not.
Yes. So, which is of course illegal, blatantly illegal, right? And I just want to repeat again, there is no election that's going to take this regime out. None.
Sometimes it takes the people themselves.
It will only, the only, 100% swear to God, the only way in history, because we're human beings like every other human being on the planet. Dominica's special, but we're not human.
That's special, yeah.
No country in history, when a man takes power in this way, has ever come out through an election.
Because they're gaming the system.
Because they have to, look, the classic problem for a dictator is if he doesn't die in bed holding power, he's going to jail.
Yeah, that's true.
Scaris comes out of power.
Yeah.
There's going to be a fight between Interpol, FBI, and us for who gets.
That's why he doesn't. That's why it appears that he doesn't want to come out of power.
100%. Every dictator in the world. A guy named Timothy Snyder, an expert on this, is one who quotes this. Wants to die in bed holding on to power. That's his paranoia. Is justice. He knows what he did.
I remember one point in time when the elections were that was probably like 3 or 4 elections ago.
Okay.
I remember the very prime minister himself. He was very much worried to the point where they had to send him overseas for medical attention. They had to send him because I think he had high blood pressure. He was very, you know, you remember that? He was very scared to know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then
he should be scared about justice.
He should.
You know, I believe in us. I just don't know when we believe in ourselves.
When we'll wake up to start believing. That's a good one right there. But just before we close, man, do you have anything you want to say going forward? What you hope to happen? What you would like to happen? Especially when it comes down to your situation.
100%. Because right now they're destroying the house I live in through the dynamite and heavy equipment. I just wish that other Dominicans would help me to block up that road until this regime actually pays me for what they owe me. So that I can survive. You know, I've worked my whole life for that, first to buy that land and then to develop that land. And I want to leave that land. I have 4 children and grandchild. I didn't do all of this for the Chinese. And
so you're hoping that they will come back to Dominica and
of course, 100%. My middle son, he's up there working to buy the materials to build his house on the land.
Okay.
So my last, he's in the military, so he has to finish that and then he'll come back. But yeah, I mean, I believe in land. I believe in fruit trees.
Yeah.
I believe in clean water. That's what I'm going to leave my children. I mean, you can have money that's worth something today, and tomorrow it ain't worth nothing. Your children go hungry.
Yeah, money is not the actual thing that people should be pursuing. They should be pursuing assets and these things.
Land.
Yeah.
So you're taking away my children's inheritance as much as you're destroying my life. And I would pray that some Dominicans who know us or have empathy for us would help block that road. And I'd say again, I have title for that land. They wouldn't be breaking any law.
Yeah.
It's the government that's breaking law. And with people's help, maybe we could get them to follow it. You know. But I'm sorry, I've been talking a lot. Forgive me.
That's fine.